Good morning and welcome to the World Affairs Brief here on Utah Faces and Places on KHQN 1480, broadcasting. The origin of the broadcast is Provo, Utah. We've got our usual guest with us, our co-host Tom Drashel in Texas. Tom, how are you this morning?
Wonderful. How are y'all doing?
And this morning we're doing great. How about you? We've got a guest with us today, a guest co-host. It's Ken Cromar that many of you know. Certainly
morning,
Tom
folks.
and I know Ken well, and we also have our engineer with us. We've got Jonathan Felt behind the controls. We're appreciative of everything he does.
Good morning.
This morning we had huge thunderstorms here in Utah last night, Tom. Lightning, thunder, and everything else, and it's supposed to be repeat again tonight. We'll see, but boy, we sure needed the moisture, and it's great that we were blessed with it. So we've got a forecast of low to mid 90s today with a broad chance of scattered thunder showers this evening here in the area. What's your weather like down there in Texas, in the Tyler area, Tom?
Well, it's beautiful this morning. I don't know what it was like. You know, we just got in at midnight last night, so I don't know what it's been like here for the last week and a half.
Well, Tom's been on the road, and he's back now after a rush trip. Well, listen, folks, as you know, this is the World Affairs Brief, and the World Affairs Brief is a document that is published by Joel Skousen, who unfortunately cannot be with us today. He's unavailable. But if you want to subscribe to the World Affairs Brief, very, very informative, you need to go to worldaffairsbrief.com. That's worldaffairsbrief.com, and you can subscribe to this very informative publication. Now, also, Joel has told us that if you want to get a free copy, a free issue, you just write to him at editor at worldaffairsbrief.com. We got so many shows that we do that I get a little bit confused with the titles. And wherever you are today, Joel, I hope you're listening, and we'll try to cover as much as we can, but certainly nowhere near as authoritative as if you were speaking yourself. And we don't do as good of a job because we don't have the same knowledge and background, but we'll do our best with what we have here. Don't you agree with that, Tom?
I agree, 100%.
Now, okay, and Ken has read through the brief as well.
Yes, sir.
And Ken, glad to have you here with us also.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
So, how are our sound levels over there, Jonathan?
Perfect.
Does everything sound okay? All right. Let's get started. The first story is that we have to cover today regarding David Miranda. Tom, who is David Miranda?
Well, David Miranda is the gay partner of Glenn Greenwald, who's a lawyer and a columnist for The Guardian, and he's the guy who broke the story on Edward Snowden, and is continuing working with them. And I guess this his partner here has been ferrying documents and or whatever stories and apparently films or whatever that they're putting together to continue to work on this. And he was grabbed there in Britain when he landed using this. I'm trying to remember the name of the. Anyway, it was there an anti-terrorism law that was there it is, Terrorism Act 2000, which allows officials to stop, search, and question officials at airports, borders, and ports and borders. Now, Joel says in the brief that it only allows them to do it if they're suspected of terrorist intent or actions. But my understanding is that they have been using it where there's no connection to terrorism whatsoever. That it is commonly understood. I say commonly. It's understood by those who are using it to be their license to for a short time, kind of like our 72 hours. You can hold them for 72 hours if you watch TV, right, for no reason whatsoever. Well, for here they have a certain length of time that they can hold them, and so they grabbed the guy, and they're trying to get all the information. They took his computers, his flash drives, his phone, everything, badgered him into threatening police and jail and so on. Didn't give him the kind of rights that we would give him here in America. I hope, although I doubt that I think the same thing would happen here in America now. And that's one of the big issues here, that this appears to have been coordinated between the U.S. and Great Britain, violating our Constitution, violating their unwritten constitution, their laws. It's just getting out of hand. Government seems to be doing whatever they darn well please.
Well, and there were claims of collusion by many people. However, it was also denied categorically, of course, by the United States that there was any collusion. But the issue here is I don't understand why I even spoke to these people. Today, if you're arrested by these thought police and so forth, the best thing for you to do is just to take the Fifth Amendment and also to demand a lawyer. Now, I know that this gentleman, David Miranda, who is a citizen, I think, of Brazil, he not only spoke and told them everything they wanted to know, but he gave them the passwords to his computers and his cell phone and all of his private documents. My recommendation, and I've been told this by many attorneys, is that if you get arrested for any reason, and even if you are in the right and should defend yourself, the best thing to do is just ask for a lawyer and say, and respectfully ask for a lawyer and refuse to speak, even if you know that they've accidentally made a mistake or whatever. You can find yourself in a lot of trouble. Go ahead,
Paul.
Ken.
Was in my reading of the report, it was made clear that he was under great duress, though, and it made sense. They kept threatening to take him to jail and that they would leave him there and that sort of thing. And that's, of course, the psychology behind getting information. If you don't talk, if you're not cooperative, then we can just keep you here indefinitely as the threat, and always keeping that door slightly open to make the person think that they're going to be able to get out that door if they just give them a little bit of information. So he said, no, I wished I had not. He gives that inference, but he was trying to get out.
Easier said than done. And
yes.
on the same hand, Joe Skousen gives the comment that it probably would have been better for him just to say, okay, put me in jail, and it would have bolstered his case, and it would probably have been something more. And there's not...
Well, but as he says, he says, I'm a foreigner, English my second language, and wasn't comfortable. I'm in a country with different laws. I'm in a room with 7 agents coming and going, keep asking me questions. And he says, I thought anything could happen. Mm-hmm. So, he didn't know if he was going to get beat up. Good thing he wasn't in Mexico with some rubber hoses, or worse, he didn't know. And so he's trying to. We have got to look at it from that point of view. And he did give him a lot of information. Eventually, apparently, he was offered a lawyer, but not of his own choice.
Not his own lawyer.
He wanted to call his partner, who is a licensed lawyer and so on. They gave him a cup of water instead.
Yeah.
But he did, and I was impressed. He refused both the lawyer and the cup of water because he didn't trust the government. And as Joel says, good for him, or whatever he said.
Yes, exactly.
That's exactly the right thing to do. He didn't. That lawyer wouldn't have helped him in this case. You can count on that. I mean, we all, we come from this deal in America that we have the right to an attorney, and okay, maybe he won't be the best attorney in the world. He'll be the best attorney in the world for the government in this kind of a situation.
Well, so
how naive can we be?
So here we have a man who is flying, who is not a suspect in any way, shape, or form of terrorism, and his partner, who is the gentleman who broke the story on Snowden, neither is he a terrorist. He is a reporter. And so they are trying to get as much information as they can from this gentleman, or to intimidate him enough whereby his partner will come forth with some information, or for some reason they're trying to terrorize these people, just like at other times. Well, we've got to go to a hard break, and we're glad to have you with us here this morning.
Yeah, what are they going to do, cut our salaries?
Welcome back to the World Affairs Brief here on KHQN 1480. We're glad to have you with us today. And we've got a guest host this morning, Ken Cromar. As usual, we've got Tom Drashel with us down near Tyler, Texas. Happy to have you with us, Tom. And the one who's missing is the expert, and that is Mr. Joe Skousen, who is unavailable today. We're glad that he provided us with his new issue of the World Affairs Brief this morning that we can talk about, and we're in the midst of discussing this situation. Now, this smacks of when one of the presidents of one of the countries, and I don't recall, of South America or whatever, they thought he was taking They thought he was taking Snowden back. What was that issue? They thought they had him on board his jet, so they pulled his jet out of the sky and ordered him to land, and then found out that he wasn't. This intimidation by these people and the collusion between the United States and these various countries is incredible. The power that the U.S. has to put pressure on these foreign countries to do their bidding in trying to accomplish what they're trying to do with Snowden. Ken?
Apparently there's almost no country in the world that is not really under the thumb of the U.S. I mean, Snowden had to try to pick a place, and he couldn't. You know, he thought of Iceland because Iceland has shown some, getting some chutzpah, some nerve in getting rid of their central bank, like as we should do, get rid of our Federal Reserve and go back to gold, silver currency as our Constitution requires. And others like Ecuador and so on. But in fact, this was, I believe, the plane that was headed was to Ecuador, wasn't it? And yet they grabbed that plane. They were able to stop that. And so he made this choice, I think correctly. Joel and I have gone back and forth on this, but I think he made the choice correctly to go to. He chose Russia and Red China, who are our enemies. But because they are truly our enemies, whether we say they are or not, whether we say they're our friends or not, they are our enemies, and they do intend. There will be a nuclear strike, and it will be Russia and Red China against the U.S. They know they're eventually going to have to tangle themselves to see who comes out king of the hill. But they are our enemies right now, and I think he made the right call on that, and Russia is using him against the U.S., Edward Snowden in this case. Anyway, it's just amazing the power that the U.S. has over all but other than our major enemies in the world.
You know, I just wanted to add, Tom, knowledge is power. And when you can control knowledge, then you have all the power. And if somebody's making a threat against that, they have to stop that because it threatens their power. Joel is not here this morning, but the last time I saw Joel was on the 4th of July at the NSA rally that I was hired to go videotape. I'm a producer-director by trade.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way, if you would like to see a 7-minute little video about that event, you can go to a website, battlehymn.com. That's battlehymn.com. And I believe that video is posted there, or you can look at it on YouTube looking up NSA 4th of July Rally, Utah. And you should be able to find that.
I've been there. Wishing I'd been there.
Oh, it was a great event, and Joel was hitting it out of the park with every comment that he made regarding the NSA. That I recall a quote: 99.9% of everything that they are collecting is done illegally and unconstitutionally.
Well, that's not according to Fox News or ABC, NBC, CBS, or CNN or MSNBC. They all say that it was an accident. Yes, there's a few thousand of these things a month, but that is unintentional. We really don't look at them. We really don't open them. We don't catalog them, and we don't keep the recordings.
If you're the average American, you're listening. If you're the average conservative, you're watching Fox News and you're seeing, as you say, a little thing here, a little thing there. I just saw the USA Today yesterday. The headline was some more revelations about some of these partial things that the NSA has done. But that's the whole point. In fact, I think at the very beginning, I think we probably skipped over a major point that Joel was making at the beginning, this pacifying the public, this campaign that the U.S. is successfully doing, whereby they're allowing intentional leaks that reveal, thousands of minor mistakes and violations of privacy, but not in... they're not doing this in a spirit of transparency, but in this devious plot to pacify Americans into thinking that this NSA spy scandal is minor and there's no big deal and it doesn't affect me. But that's the point. It does affect everyone. It affects 100% of every single digital communication that's going on in the United States and most of what's going on in the world. And as the U.S. and they're using the terms saying, well, these things there are filters that go through, and they suggest or they intimate, they infer that the filters are on the front end. They're not on the front end. They're collecting everything, and they're only keeping those things that, as they say, relate to terrorism and so on. But they're only looking at that, using it right now, supposedly.
Isn't that really just a cover? Isn't that really just a cover, Tom, to say that that they're actually filtering anything? They if they hold on to all the information, then filter it. They still have it, and they'll look at it later. And one should assume that everything is documented. That should be the assumption. and that is wrong.
It's all being, and everything is being categorized, and everyone's on the red or the blue list. Which is the good list? Which is the bad list? I can't remember anymore.
Well, and interestingly, it's they describe these founding fathers that were inspired to do what they did, inspired from an almighty God who was looking out for a way to protect the unalienable rights of his children through a document called the U.S. Constitution. We are not a democracy. A democracy is when two wolves and a sheep are voting for what's for dinner. We are a constitutional republic. What we have here is an attempt to obliterate the Constitution, which protects our God-given rights.
And they're succeeding at it. How are we going to? When are we going to wake up? What is it going to take? Joel said way back, a month or so ago. He said, "I had hoped that this is so big, this is so huge, it's such a blatant violation on such a huge level. How could it get worse other than just coming and taking guns out of your homes, taking people out of their homes?" And yet it hasn't woken up America at all. The average America out there is buying this subtle suggestion from the U.S. that, hey, this is necessary. You've got to always give up a little bit of security, and this is just a message. You've got to give up a little bit of the Constitution here. Don't get carried away. It's being done to fight against terror, and people are buying it. And where's the public outrage? What's it going to take?
Tom, at that battlehymn.com website mentioned earlier, I believe in fact, I'm confident there's a rally that's referenced that will be on 9/11. It's called NSA 2. And so if someone wants to know what they can do to help and be involved and protest, that will take place on the steps of the Utah State Capitol. And that information is available at battlehymn.com. Stand up, America. Now is the time. That day is ominous for many reasons, and that is the right day to have this NSA rally number 2, where people
when
can...
Is that?
Say that again, Tom?
When is that rally going to be on
9/11.
the Utah Capitol?
9/11. And I believe it's at 5
9/11.
o'clock. I don't have access to the internet right now, but Jonathan might be able to tell us. I believe it's at 5 p.m., Utah State Capitol steps. The license and everything necessary for that event has been secured. It's a legal rally protest against the NSA and what they're doing. And you can't help but wonder what other interesting events may be occurring on that day.
5 p.m.
5 p.m. it is.
Yeah.
Be there.
Super. Wow. Good for y'all.
Well, the interesting thing here is little by little, the government leaks this information about what's happening. I think I have kind of a theory behind that, but why do you think that the government themselves, the powers that be, are leaking this information about the spine, Tom?
Well, to suggest that what they're leaking is so much less than what has already been leaked, and so that Americans will say, "Oh, well, the government is being responsible about this." The government is showing here, and they're showing where there's some specific. There's 56,000 emails here. 56,000. We're talking trillions, not even billions or millions of emails. We're talking trillions. We're talking about all of them. That are being. Everything
right.
comes down to fiber optic internet. All of them are being run through the supercomputer.
Well, Tom, the problem is I really don't have anything to hide. Why do I care if they look at any of my emails or any of my phone calls?
And Joel addresses that very well also. The subtle suggestion that if we don't have anything to hide, but if we are brought to court and we don't have anything to hide, then the courts will protect us, and that's what's clear is that the courts are not protecting us. They're not protecting them over there in England. They're not protecting them here in the U.S. The courts are laying down. Now, whether they're useful idiots or agents provocateur and know what they're going on, I used to think when Lenin said agents, and I'm watching politics as it goes along, and I'm thinking, well, maybe 1 or 2% are agents provocateur, politicians out there that really know what's going on. But most of them, they're good-hearted people. Maybe there's 98% who are just useful idiots, and they're being deceived, and they don't have deep enough roots in the Constitution. But for Pete's sake, when you're looking, they're all grown men and women who can read English, and they can read this 12-page document that we call the Constitution, and is the rule of law here in America. Or at least it embodies the rule of law in America, and yet I don't think anyone is dumb enough to be that stupid, to be that naive, to be useful idiots. I think that I've got to come up with a new phrase. There's got to be something that is people who are useful idiots that are so stupid that they obviously must be partially agents provocateur or willing to go along with the agents provocateur. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yes.
There's just, how can anyone not understand? How can the people that we're listening to here? I'm talking about the Relief Society presidents. I'm talking about the bishops and the stake presidents and the elders and the owners of businesses who just want to be left alone. And so on, how can people not say it's here? Those Gadianton robbers are here, just like Moroni said that they're going to be. And if you're not LDS, and they're looking at this and saying, we're back here in Germany. Is it 1932 or is it 1942? Is it 1938, 39 when the war actually began? We're somewhere in there. We're not at 1942 yet because the open war hasn't begun. We're not in 1932.
Tom?
But we're right up there around 1938, I say. Yeah.
Tom, speaking of Germany, a little further down in Joel's report, it talks about Windows 8 and the special surveillance chip. I don't know that a lot of people understand that the government's been in bed with Microsoft and creating these little internal chips that allow backdoor entry, facilitates the entry and the cataloging and retrieval of information. And Germany's upset about it, and they've made some complaints to Microsoft. Windows 8 is the problem. And just a quick read here. According to leaked internal documents from the German Federal Office of Information Security, it appears that it's outright dangerous to use Microsoft products.
We'll be back with you in 3 minutes here on the World Affairs Brief, Utah Faces and Places on KHQN 1480 in Provo, Utah.
Great day.
Well, welcome back to Utah Faces and Places, and as usual, every Friday morning from 8 to 9, we have Joel Skousen's World Affairs Brief, and today we've got with us a special guest, Ken Cromar.
Good morning.
And we're happy to have you with us, Ken.
Thank you very much.
A constitutionalist, and we, as usual, we have our very experienced co-host Tom Drashel with us in Texas. And Tom's been away for a while, but he came back to join us on the show today. Fortunately for you, Tom, you're not on camera like we are.
Fortunately for you, I'm not on camera. My dead head.
And so...
hey, this thing you were talking about previously about Windows 8 and the special surveillance chip and so on. So it's clear now. We know now that there is a chip and so the government, which has been shared with government from the very beginning, so that there's a backdoor way that they can get into all of the various types of. We're not just talking about your internet emails, but your phone calls and your tweets and your Facebook and all of that kind of stuff. Everything that's available. I wanted to mention or ask you. Years ago, we talked about what I call the V chip. The V chip, and there's nothing in the World Affairs Brief about it this time, but the idea of a chip whereby your phone can be used as a microphone listening device, even when it's turned off. Do either of you know anything about that?
Oh yes, I mean, Tom's talked about it, and we've had Joe Wolverton discuss it at length. And they can turn. There's a website that has been now taken down, but this website basically was a group of hackers that were turning people's computers on in their bedrooms while they were sleeping, and or while they were making love or whatever, and they would post these right on their website, this hacker website, where showing people in their homes doing whatever they do, and their computers were off, but a laptop, if it's open, the camera's pointing out towards the room, and those are turned on. I actually saw 2 or 3 of those videos because someone sent me an email on it. and here are people doing whatever they do privately in their homes and their computers were not on. They also even can listen to your telephone conversations while your phone is off. They can listen through the speaker system.
Can I add something, Paul? Whenever I'm having a discussion that I think is really important, that I want to make sure that, oh, by the way, welcome to the NSA. I've got my phone here, and glad you could join us. Maybe we can enlighten you on a couple of things. But I try to make sure that I put the phone someplace that's not anywhere near me. I've heard of people that are going into big meetings, and they collect the phones outside the room to at least ensure some sort of security. I didn't have any idea I'd be doing this, but let me just show you my laptop. I have right up here, as you can see, I've just covered the camera with just a little piece of paper and a little piece of tape, and that's just to cover the camera. So presumably there's no other camera on this laptop, and I am able to protect myself in that regard. But we have to be aware of what's going on and protect ourselves, so we can protect our nation and our families.
Well, now, and back to this Windows 8 thing, gentlemen, do not... Windows 8 has been a disaster for Microsoft. People have not gone to... It's had some technical problems and other issues, but thankfully not a lot of people are using it. My understanding is that Windows 7 is only going to be available till 2020 or earlier. And we're not even sure how safe we are with Windows 7. However, Windows 8 has a known issue in that there is a back door that is being that was written in by Microsoft and provided to the NSA or other government officials, where they can go to your computer in the middle of the night or at any time, and they can access it remotely and just literally have access to everything inside of your hard drive. So they can access your usernames and your passwords and everything else you have on there. That is a known issue. If you decide to upgrade to Windows 8, you're making a mistake. If you buy a computer with Windows 8 already loaded, you're going to want to unload it and use a different operating system.
Linux is supposedly a safer system.
For now, Linux is right. Safe, and Joel even mentions in the World Affairs brief, let's move over to Linux, and we'll probably.
And
be
the beauty of that is you can get that for free. That's very nice. The technical inventors of all of these things actually branched off to the side and decided to create a product for free to go into competition with Microsoft, and they've donated everything. You can have that kind of service for free.
Open source.
Open source, yep.
Tom, have you got anything more to add to the Windows 8 story?
Well, only, I guess, to say that for really non-technical persons like myself, I've been being told for years by my geek friends, I say that very respectfully, I mean people who know what's going on and understand these things, it's time to switch to Linux or Linux. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Linux.
And Joel says, it is time. But shall we believe even that Linux? So why would it not be? I understand that the technology of Linux is not as controllable, but is it something that could be relatively safe? Why should we believe that the government shouldn't be able to monitor Linux also? What is the deal with Linux?
There's two issues. One is controlling your computer remotely. The other issue is that they listen to everything and they watch everything that you post and
every keystroke
you make, and so they do have control of that. But the issue is going in at night or any time and accessing your computer and looking at what's on your hard drive, including whatever private things you have and encrypted things you have. And the other thing is that on this issue, Joel recommends that we all start encrypting our emails. There's several email services. There's several encryption services. Some of them require keys, some don't. But no matter what, the government is able to access those. And at one point in time, I'm aware of an Israeli encryption service that is supposedly unbreakable, just like the old Enigma. And then the government quickly came out and said that that's not legal because they have to have access to these things. So they don't even allow you to encrypt them if they can't decrypt them. And so that's the issue. But they said it will slow the system down to the point that if you do encrypt your emails, it will be more difficult, and you'll clog the system with this information.
I found that very interesting. The more people that encrypt, the better. it slows the bigger picture down. And
but isn't that a sad commentary on the whole system? That we as American citizens, and these people are our servants. We have government was called by Thomas Jefferson a necessary evil, but they were there to protect our rights, and the rights were enumerated in the Constitution. They're not constitutional rights. They're God-given rights. They're unalienable rights that are protected by the Constitution. And those rights are our rights, and the government people, the bureaucrats, the elected officials are our servants. But it is the tables have been turned. We are their slaves, and we are to be subject to their edicts, and so now it's the tables have turned.
But I think that the key point is if you don't know your rights, you don't have them, and so at every opportunity, one needs to stand up and say, "Look, these are my rights. You don't have my permission to take them." And as a matter of fact, God doesn't allow you the permission to take my rights. The word inalienable, as it's often said, it's actually unalienable, is the way I like to explain it. You all know what a lien is, right? If you've got a lien on your home, that means the bank has interest, and you don't own your home until that's paid off, and even then you've got taxes on it. So, but the point is that it's my rights. I can't sell them. I can't give them away. They cannot be bought. They are unalienable. But if you don't know you have those rights and you don't defend them, then they can be just taken away because you didn't defend them. And so at every opportunity we need to stand up and state who we are and that my rights are unalienable. You cannot touch them. You have no authority to do that. To do so not only breaks a covenant that I have with God and God with me, you are potentially damning your soul by stepping between us. You do not have my permission. You do not have the authority to do that. You've sworn an oath to the Constitution which will protect me from you, and you do not have that authority.
Well, isn't there any penalty for people who break that covenant where they swore to protect us and protect the Constitution from enemies, foreign and domestic? It seems like that is broken by everyone who takes the oath these days, and there seems to be no penalty.
Virtually everyone. Name one who's not, who's not willing to. I mean, Ron Paul was there. He goofed. He wrongly voted for I think it was NAFTA back in 1994. But he quickly said, "I was wrong. I was convinced. I was wrong." And after that, I watched him. He stuck to it. But there's not anyone left out there today. I got to say something. Y'all are in Utah. I campaigned. I can't say against Mike Lee. I said he was the second best. I campaigned for Cheryl and just saying, well, she is a constitutionalist. She'll stick to it and so on. And even though Mike Lee seems to be a good man, I said he will be like his father, who will say the right things, but he'll get down and he'll vote wrong on this and that. He'll go along with the establishment and say that you got to. In these kind of things, you have to be reasonable and so on. But so far, he has done a good job. So far, in my book, Mike Lee is the best U.S. senator.
Tom, may I add? I went in to cottage meetings and met him early on, and I was worried, frankly. I did not hear anything that convinced me that he was a constitutionalist and that he had a plan. Nevertheless, I have been pleasantly surprised. And the case in point that would demonstrate who Mike Lee is, at least to me at this moment, is that two things. One is that he is absolutely against defunding Obamacare, keeping the government operating. It's sold by the media as something else, but the government would stay operating, but Obamacare would be defunded, and we could stop that, and we only have this year to get it done. So that. And I did interview him recently for a documentary called Miracles, which I think we might be talking about soon.
Yep. And then, you want to stay with us into the next hour. We're going to be discussing miracles. We've only got 10 seconds. We're glad to have you with us here on World Affairs Brief, and we'll be back with you here after a 2-minute break in KHQN 1480.
Good morning to you there.
Welcome back to the World Affairs Brief. Normally we have Joel Skousen with us, but today we've got a guest with us, Tom. We've got Mr. Cromar. And you and I go way back several years, and you and Jonathan go back before when Jonathan had all of his hair.
Before time began.
Yeah, back to the days of Noah and the ark. And we've got, of course, our expert co-host, Tom Drashel. For those of you who may or may not remember, at one point in time, many years ago, Tom and I were co-hosts on a Salt Lake radio station that many of you know. And Tom, we're glad to have you with us here. We expect to get the expert testimony out of you while Joel is not here with us. One thing we would like to talk about in this particular section of our show, and it's the last session, but what is going on, Tom, with this Manning verdict, and what's the story behind it, and what are the results, and how does it affect things?
Well, it's just this Bradley Manning. I mean, he was born Bradley Manning. He's now calling himself Chelsea Manning the day after the verdict came down, giving him 35 years for being another whistleblower. I mean, it's just another whistleblower who is supposedly, I mean, what's being said about him is that he has released the largest set of restricted documents ever leaked to the public, supposedly more than Julian Assange with WikiLeaks, or more than even Edward Snowden. I'm not sure that that's true. My understanding of what Edward Snowden has available and has been sharing with The Guardian and on a bit-by-bit basis is maybe larger. But at least he has we're saying that he has someone's saying that he's released the largest set of restricted documents ever leaked to the public. So, so he, who now the public is officially calling she, was sentenced to 35 years in prison and dishonorably discharged, and supposedly be eligible for parole after a third of that 35-year sentence. It's the same deal. This is Edward Snowden all over again. It's Julian Assange. He's a whistleblower who, in my book, is a hero who's exposing government corruption, and in this case, he's what's going on over there in the Middle East, and with the wars, quote unquote, and he's charged with a bunch, I think 22 offenses, including aiding the enemy, which is the most serious charge. So some people are saying, well, it was a victory for the defense in that he didn't get life in prison or even death, which he could have gotten for the things that he was.
Okay, what were in these documents? What is a sampling of what was contained in the documents that he leaked to the public? Well, as I understand, it included videos of 2007 Baghdad airstrike and the 2009 airstrike in Afghanistan, and 250,000 U.S. diplomatic cables and 500,000 Army reports that came to be known as the Iraq war logs or the Afghan war logs. And so a lot of that material was published by WikiLeaks and its media partners back in 2010. But he's so it's stuff that was going on over there, and he apparently wanted people to know the truth about what was going on. And she, I'm looking at a picture of him. He just looks like the most. Our viewers are looking at a picture of him as well.
Are they? All right. Well, he doesn't look like a girl yet, but they're supposedly asking for hormone.
Well, he should be very happy in prison then. But I'm sorry, all levity aside, I thought that at one point in time there was as a matter of fact, I heard that only a couple of weeks ago on the Obama, on one of his websites, was the campaign promise that he was going to be open and the most open administration ever in the history of the country, but also that he was going to go reward whistleblowers, and that they were encouraging whistleblowers to come forward. And all of that was removed a couple of weeks ago off of their website. But what is the situation with it, that when Mr. Obama was campaigning for president, he encouraged whistleblowers, and so now that they've come forward, he's doing what he can to hunt them down and to imprison them and to take away any credibility that they have, destroying their name and making them traitors to this nation.
I mean, we've got got to start saying it. We've got to start saying these people are liars.
Yes.
They are children of the father of lies. It frustrates me on a daily basis that you listen to good people. I mean, otherwise good people who I think are good-hearted. Rush Limbaugh, Hannity, Mark Levin, for Pete's sake. They're talking about the Constitution. Just go to Mark Levin. He's talking about the Constitution. We've got it, and then all of a sudden, now he wants a con-con, a new constitutional convention. And here's the guy that's the most conservative radio talk show host out there. Is there no one who can stick to the Constitution and not fall for some it's an old thing that's been pushed for decades.
Tom,
can you imagine a new constitutional convention? Can you think of 5 people, politicians, that you'd like to give the power to rewrite the Constitution, much less 55 or whatever the original number was? I can't think of 5.
Okay, so that's the whole point here, is that our listeners need to understand that a con-con, it's known as a con-con, it's a constitutional convention, is probably the worst idea. I even have people who are close to me, even family members, and say, we need to have a constitutional convention and pass all these new amendments and everything else. I say, wait a minute. Where are you going to get a group of God-inspired people together to bring forth the document we have? The thing that's going to happen is a con-con. That's what they would love to have, to get rid of this Constitution completely and replace it by their own tyrannical document that literally controls people's lives. A constitutional convention, a con-con, is evil. It is wrong. And if we have a con-con, you can kiss this nation and any freedoms that are protected by our Constitution, you can kiss it goodbye. It is gone.
Amen to that. The fact of the matter is that moment in history that gave us the Constitution of this nation was a divinely inspired moment. People, the best minds in history, were brought together to bring that document forward. I can't think of 5 people, as was mentioned before, that could actually be a part of a committee and would not even be allowed anywhere near a committee to create a proper new Constitution. It would be our death knell. We cannot do that.
That's right. And yet you continue to hear about it every year. But there's a big push, and the last big push was back in the 90s. And by the way, it was Mike Leavitt, then governor of Utah, who was the point man nationally under the they wanted to use they call it the Conference of the States, but it was a constitutional convention. It would have been held in Philadelphia on July 4th in 1994, whenever it was supposed to happen. And it was well enough. It was pushed back. Enough people understood that. Now there's another big push for it, and it's Mark Levin, and he's saying we need to have these 11 or 13 liberty amendments, as he calls them. I haven't even read what they are, but I'm sure that they're probably wonderful things, every one of them. My suggestion is that we obey the Constitution, and when we need to change the Constitution, follow Article 5, amend the Constitution, but do it one amendment at a time.
That's
Don't
right.
call
Con is evil. Now, Tom, we've only got 3 minutes left, and there are many stories in this World Affairs Brief. Folks, you need to go to worldaffairsbrief.com, and you need to subscribe. Now, one thing we failed to do today, and we keep forgetting to do this, is that if you have any questions or comments, you can call our toll-free number, and that toll-free number is 800-776-1913. Bad year, 1-800-776-1913. Oh. What a terrible year that was. But anyway, we've got a couple of things. One story, and I'll just mention these. There's a story about China is the mortal enemy of the West. If you think China's our friend, they've deceived you, and they've been successful at their disinformation. Watch out. China is rising. They're building their military, and they are a definite threat to this country. Another story talked about the United States bringing in a military plane loaded with tons of cocaine, ostensibly for the purpose of destroying the cocaine because the incinerator at the source was not operational. It stopped at Nicaragua. For those of you who remember the Contra affair, and that is
Arkansas, or
yes, exactly.
It goes back centuries for big things.
And it talks about maybe
have always controlled illegal drugs. It's
that's it. The government behind the sale and distribution of drugs for financial gain, as that story discussed. discusses. But let's talk a little bit about a story that's kind of near and dear, Tom, to the hearts of two of the people here, both Jonathan, our chief engineer, as well as Mr. Cromar. Both of them, Ken, you and Jonathan served together in Japan, and there was a terrible earthquake, and when the earthquake took place, there was some destruction to the infrastructure there, including the manufacturing of energy.
Yes.
So the power plant that was producing nuclear power, Fukushima, is that where it was?
Yes.
It was damaged, and the cores were exposed, and water is getting contaminated, and that is that water seeping into the ground, as well as the groundwater, as well as going out to the ocean. Now, there has been claims that the ocean has been contaminated, that the people in the United States are getting sick.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, I think that in this World Affairs brief, Joel said that really isn't true. Yes, it is seeping the water, but there's not been markable, measurable amounts of contamination that have affected the public. And I just looked at my clock, and we're down to 30 seconds. Boy, how the time flies. And unfortunately, you and Jonathan even had some stories. The city you served in was completely wiped away.
The last city that I served in was Ishinomaki, and a friend of mine was there a short time after the event. He said the city is gone. He saw a new parking lot out in the water out there, and he thought, what in the world is that? And what it was all the cars had been washed out to sea, and they got hung up.
Well, we're out of time. We appreciate you being with us today, Ken and Tom, and we'll see you next week. KHQN 1480.